Awesome. We are live. A couple technical difficulties, but we are good to go. So we'll just give some people a little time to stream in here and get connected. But while we're waiting for some people to join, we can just go around and introduce everybody. So first we've got in the upper right corner here, Rachel Greer. She's the founder of Troveres, full service Amazon agency. So Rachel, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, so great to be here.
Absolutely. And also, we've got Lesley Hensell. She's the co founder of Riverbend Consulting, which is a great agency if you've got to deal with the headaches of Amazon and get your account taken down or something like that. So, thanks for joining us, Lesley.
Hey there, happy to be here.
And last but not least, Kevin Sanderson, the VP of Marketing over at My Amazon Guy, Amazon agency. And then he also runs Maximizing E-commerce, where he puts on some great events for Amazon sellers as well. So appreciate you joining me, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm an Amazon seller myself. I'm in my office with a little warehouse where I keep stock. So I've probably got too many logs in the fire, so to speak. But
Yeah, that's something that will definitely happen when you're an entrepreneur. Sometimes it's hard to stay
yeah,
focused all the time. But all right, I appreciate you guys joining me. So this is our inaugural live stream of the top Amazon news for the week. So what we're going to be doing, we're just going to be going through some of the top news and give our opinions on it, and hopefully help you guys out there that are watching with selling on Amazon and any issues and stuff that you might have by going over some of the top news and give you some great insights. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into the first news here. So the headline, this is actually a LinkedIn post from Aaron Cordoves, who is a big private label guy with Zulai Kitchen, does some great work, but he's talking about package variations on Amazon listings and how Amazon is basically letting it fly, even though it's kind of against the image requirements for the main image, where you can put text on a bottle or on the packaging that isn't actually on the packaging to help you stand out in search results. You can also put like the flavor and by putting maybe raspberries or strawberries and stuff like that. And he's talking about how a lot of people, say that's against terms of service and stuff like that. But in reality, Amazon does it themselves. Lots of people are doing it, and it can really help getting a increased click-through rate for your products. So why don't we jump over to you, Rachel? What are your thoughts on putting extra content on images and going into that little bit of a gray area?
I think the biggest concern is depending on your category, it'll get your listing suppressed. So there's that. So like there's a few things where Amazon's policies don't get enforced, or they get enforced randomly if somebody reports you, or if seller support actually sees something and then they refuse to cooperate with you. But sometimes their automation actually can catch things. They've been improving over the last, probably I would say the last year. They actually launched a new tool on AWS that specifically, it's called Recognition, that's specifically for image recognition, hence the name. They're not very clever about their names there. And the goal there is to recognize certain items in images, and that's what the software is for. And so, of course, they repackaged it nicely, and now they're selling it to AWS customers. And it's much better than it used to be. So if you want to do something like that, what you can't do is you can't make it obvious to a bot, basically, that can recognize images. And so what I've seen people do is do full-on digital mock-ups where it looks like the actual box. Everything looks correct. And that's just not what the customer gets. And so sometimes the customer then will be like, so I got a different box, and that was weird, but whatever, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can have a bit of a customer experience impact as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned there in the beginning, depending on the category, like for example, if you're buying shoes or a T-shirt or something, and you don't get exactly what's imaged, that's going to be or what's shown, that's going to be a lot bigger issue than, getting a vitamin that doesn't say sugar-free at the top or something like that. Maybe it says it down below in smaller print.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is that you mentioned shoes and clothes. Those are actually the two categories that will immediately suppress your listing for having any words on the primary image.
Yeah. 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 And I was playing with this just recently where we tried to put some text in like a circle next to the product because it didn't really work well to put it on the product. And that immediately got taken down for having text in the images. So the bots caught that really quickly. And so you really got to be careful. It's got to look like it's on the actual packaging of the product. How about you, Kevin? You got some thoughts on this?
Yeah, actually, Stephen Pope did a video on this on the My Amazon Guy channel, just to plug that real quick, the other day. And his take is basically, as long as you're doing this in a way that helps the customer, yes, this is a gray area, but generally speaking, you can get away with it. In the worst case, it's going to happen oftentimes. Now, granted, we're not talking about apparel or shoes here, but in most cases, they'll just make you add a different image. And so if it's helping the customer, then they usually don't care. One of the things he did was he actually Googled what are the top consumer brands. And so I don't know if I want to say names of brands, but let's say a printer company that you've probably heard of that has two letters. Mm-hmm. He was showing one of their listings, and there was like a purple printout that said 6 months of ink or something to that effect. And that there was a toothpaste. There's two big brands of toothpaste in this country. So it was one of those two. And he basically was showing that the package says, you get 6 items or whatever it said on the packaging. He goes, that does not say that on the packaging because he had ordered it himself. Mm-hmm. And so big brands are starting to do this too. So it's really coming down to like, if you're adding, let's say, a keyword into the image, like, and a keyword on the packaging. And like the example that Aaron had given and the example that you cited was like a ribbon at the top. Chances are someone's not going to fight Amazon and ask for a refund because it didn't have a pink ribbon at the top of the bottle. They probably won't remember it. Where you can probably get yourself into trouble is like, let's say it's gift packaging and it looks completely different. Mm-hmm. Maybe not like just a couple of keywords are different on the packaging, but like the packaging itself is not. Yours comes in a plain white box, but you made it look like it was this ornate gift box. Well, that's materially different. Yep. So as long as it's not materially different, and then adding text is where you can also get into trouble, like somewhere other than the box itself. And John Aspinall, who actually used to work at my Amazon Guy, but now is at PickFood, one of the things he's taught is if you use Canva and you're adding the text, that he does 75% transparency, so that way it kind of looks more like it's on the box. Because to Rachel's point, the bots are getting better at picking up these things, and so where people also sometimes get declined is they try to make it look like there's this ribbon or something kind of hanging off to the side, or a tag that clearly isn't there. I think the bots are starting to get smart enough for that one and add a keyword there. So packaging, or if it makes sense on the product where you're not materially changing what the product is, mm-hmm. Usually you can get away with it.
Yeah. And one thing interesting I seen the other day, it might have been a month or so back, but I seen the Amazon Echo listing came up for me, and Amazon had like a bluish blackish background and then text written at the top, Amazon Echo, and then the Echo there in the middle. So clearly
break their own rules.
We'd all get taken down for that, so don't go that extreme, because Amazon skirts their own rules all the time. But if you're careful about it, you can do a lot of cool stuff. Lesley, what do you think? You got some input on that?
So I agree with what Rachel said at the beginning, that you really need to Photoshop this, like the best Photoshopping you've ever done. It has to really look like it's part of the actual product and the image. It can't look like it's something that you wrote over the top of it. That's not going to fly, because eventually Amazon could pick that up. Are they enforcing against this right now? Not that I've seen. And, that's what we specialize in, is enforcement. We see what they're enforcing on all the time. And this isn't a trend right now that they're enforcing, but they could. And then I just want to throw out the big caveat for everyone that you need to hear, which is Amazon does stuff all the time to break their rules. Never, ever, 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 ever take what Amazon is doing on the retail side for their products or for vendor and say, well, they did it, so I can, or other seller did it, so I can. Amazon's enforcement is incredibly uneven. There could be a million other people literally breaking a rule, and if you're the one who gets caught, that is not a defense. So like your Echo example, never say, well, they had text in that primary image, I'm cool, because seller performance doesn't care. They'll just laugh, and they aren't even looking at what vendor and retail do. They're following their own SOPs, which say that you, lowly seller, cannot get away with that.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to remember is that they're not enforcing it right now, but they could at any time. The good thing about an image being taken down, it's usually a very quick fix. So you're going to want to have a backup image ready just in case that goes down. You can throw it up, and 10 minutes later, your listing will probably be back up and going. But, Amazon can change the rules of the game at any time.
Yeah, and one thing just to note on myself as a seller, I have an image that they must have taken down, because if you go to the listing, it's the old image. But when I look in my orders, the thumbnail for that order is the image that they're no longer showing. So I got kind of slapped on the wrist, but there was no slap on the wrist. All I did was just revert back to the other image. So
and
there's that too.
That's kind of a good hack. I don't know if it's always going to work, but and I'm assuming they're pulling that old image from the previous one you had uploaded. So maybe make sure that you upload the correct image, air quotes, correct image first,
Compliant.
let it go live, and then change it to the one that you've manipulated a little bit. That might help it so it doesn't go down. It just reverts back to the old image, perhaps. Hard to say. I don't know if that's exactly how that works or where they're pulling those from, but that would be my best guess. All right. So, definitely give it a shot if you're not doing that already. If you're in a category that you can get away with that. Next piece of news here. Walmart lets sellers list used collectibles and runs a special promotion. So essentially, they are from July 1st to September 30th. They're allowing you to list collectible items without a fee. But I think the bigger story here is that they are allowing more collectibles and used things on their marketplace, which I don't believe they've done that in the past. Thoughts on that, Lesley?
Okay, good for you, Walmart. I have really enjoyed watching Walmart over the last year, because they're actually starting to chip away a little bit. They're actually starting to improve their market share. If you look at all the stats for them, they are growing online. At first, I hated their redesign, not going to lie. But now that I'm used to it, there is something insane about being able to order an item that's not available in store and it arrives on my doorstep in like 3 hours and I don't pay anything shipping for it. That's crazy. It's coming from like a distribution center instead of from a store. It's amazing. So they've really invested and gone all in to try and compete against Amazon. And I think that this is one of those things where some, project manager said, I've heard from a lot of sellers over on Amazon that collectibles are not really welcome right now. We've got sellers who sell high-end collectibles, who are names you'd recognize, like people who are respected in the industry, and Amazon doesn't want any part of it. And they're doing this bizarre thing in enforcement where they're applying the same invoice standards to collectible and used items that they are to new, which is insanity. It's not even their SOP, I would hope. And it's making it very frustrating. So, good for you, Walmart, to try and really take some market share, maybe away from Amazon and pull a little from eBay, and get this stuff up on their platform. I don't know if it'll work, but I think it'll be really fun to watch. And if I were a seller in the collectible space, I'd be all over that just to see what happens. Give it a test.
Yeah. My first thought was definitely competing a little bit more with eBay, because I think that's eBay's kind of last stand, is on like collectibles and things like that, where people go there and use stuff in general. Typically, there's a lot more on eBay. It's easier to find when you're looking for something. Like, for example, I was just looking for a replacement antenna for a 2016 Jeep Patriot, and finding that kind of stuff on eBay is a lot easier. So maybe this is something with Walmart to try to target that market a little bit. What do you think, Kevin?
I think, I agree with you that they're going after eBay with this. And I think some of it is because they're not getting the traction going after Amazon that they had hoped. And maybe they're trying to go after another marketplace, being eBay, because eBay is kind of dying on the vine. Like when I got started selling in 2015, it was like people would talk about, like, there was Amazon and then eBay was kind of like almost a close second. Like, I don't really hear people talk about eBay all that much. And, to Lesley's point, it's been interesting the last couple of years to watch Walmart and kind of see how they are growing and evolving. They're doing better. They're making progress. I don't want to take that away from them. But, I think in the seller community, there was all this thought that, like, oh, Walmart was going to be the next big stand of, someone to compete with Amazon. And I don't think it's really panned out. So I think they're pivoting, trying to find other ways that they can grow their platform. And maybe they're thinking of it as like, okay, if someone comes to buy a high-end baseball card or something like that, that now they can buy groceries and buy other marketplace items. So maybe it's just another way to get more customers in the door too. So, I mean, kudos to them for trying something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would kind of be cool to see them start like collectible auctions or something like that. Then it'd really be targeted
Yes.
for sure.
Wall Bay.
Yeah, there you go. Rachel, thoughts on this?
I mean, it just reminds me of when Amazon launched Z Shops. And like, you guys probably don't remember Z Shops, but occasionally you'll get a report from Amazon where the header says something like Z Shop in the header. There's just like some weird stuff left over in the databases from back when that was a thing. And that was Amazon's first foray into trying to compete with eBay. Yeah. And they did a whole auction site, and it was an absolutely miserable failure. It didn't work at all. And it just reminds me of all the memes I've been seeing about Justin and Britney being in the news, because Britney now has a #1 single after Justin Timberlake got arrested and everything. It all feels very 20 years ago. I don't know if that's where I'd be bragging about launching something new.
Yeah, we're going back in time. I don't know how many people actually still use auctions too much on eBay, if that's the largest part of their business still, or if it's the buy it now. I always use the buy it now if I do go there and buy something.
Yeah, almost everything is moved to buy it now on eBay. I'm also a longtime seller. I've sold since 2010 on both platforms, Amazon and eBay. And consumers really don't love the auction format for most things. I think there are still some fun lot kind of things you can do where it's a gamified and fun. But most stuff, I think people actually prefer the buy it now.
Yeah, I know my brother, he likes to sell like Magic the Gathering and different trading cards and stuff like that. So he'll go on eBay and try to win lots auctions of these cards, 500 cards for $100 or whatever, and then sell them individually and maybe make $500 or $1,000 selling them individually. So there's still definitely that market, but definitely shrinking on the auction side. And then we've got Craigslist too. We forgot about Craigslist. Anybody still shop on Craigslist? I don't think so.
Never shopped on Craigslist.
I think Craigslist has moved to Facebook Marketplace. That's where all that traffic went, for sure. All right, cool. So it'll be cool to see where that goes. I mean, I would love to see Amazon take more market share and compete. We need more competition, and It'd be better to have it from a U.S. company than the, like Shen and Temu and TikTok.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. This one is another LinkedIn post. Whoops, wrong button. So this is from, and I'm probably going to mess up his last name, but Liren Hirschgorn.
Mm-hmm.
So Amazon introduced a new beta sponsored display lead gen ads. So essentially what they're trying to do, and I thought this was interesting, but they're trying to compete more with Facebook and Google because according to this graphic that he posted, Amazon in the last quarter of 2023 had 48 billion in ad sales. Facebook had 39 billion. Amazon only had 15 billion, and then YouTube had 9 billion. And what he's talking about is that the main reason Amazon isn't bigger is because they are solely focused on people selling on their platform, other than maybe Amazon TV ads. But this is kind of what I see is more of a shot at maybe Facebook, where you see all those Facebook ads and you click on the ad and then it pops up a form to collect information. So what are you guys' thoughts on this? Why don't we start with Kevin this time? What are your thoughts on Amazon trying to take some market space from Facebook and Google?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a natural evolution because if you think about it, started out, it was all sponsored product ads, and then they added the sponsored brands, and basically everything was kind of going up funnel, and then eventually, you have DSP. And so it's really trying to get more and more people to buy things for products on their platform. And you think about it, like when you go to page one, everything is an ad. Well, not everything, but like a good chunk of it is an ad, whereas not that long ago, it was like one or two listings would be sponsored on page one of the search results page. And so I think they've put as much inventory they can put on, placements on, product detail pages and search results. They're going more and more up funnel. So I think they're running out of places that they can, dig into the pockets of their advertisers to sell physical products. So now you got to go other ways. And so some of that is non-physical products. So in this case, he was talking about, lead gen ads. And funny thing was, just this morning, I got an ad on my LinkedIn profile for their lead gen product. And I think those lead gen products where the form is on it stays on platform, so to speak, like meaning you're not trying to cookie people and use like a Facebook pixel or something like that to get the conversion data. Because ever since a couple of years ago with the iOS, I think it was 14 update, all these advertisers don't have as much data to know how well ads are converting. And so lead gen, if it all stays within their platform, they know because it's first party data. Okay, this person, clicked on the ad, they submitted their information, so they know. So this is one way to kind of dip their toes in without having to worry too much about figuring out all the data that Facebook was trying to figure out, to get ads. So this is kind of a way to get non-product ads because companies are always looking for leads, Everybody on here is looking for leads at some point, for, business. All businesses are looking for leads. So I think it's a smart play on Amazon's plate to try this, although I don't know that most sellers would benefit necessarily. So even if you get an ad saying, hey, or an email saying, test this out, I would caution most sellers, unless you're selling really high priced products, to dip your toes in that water.
Yeah, I think the mindset of people on Amazon is a lot different than the mindset of people on Facebook, YouTube, and to an extent Google. Because when you're on those platforms, you're more looking for entertainment, basically kind of wasting time. And you see an ad that interests you, then I think maybe you're more likely to do that. But when you're on Amazon, you usually already know what you're looking for and what you want to buy for the most part. So it might be a little bit of a different mindset in the traffic that's coming there.
Well, I also would imagine these are probably more on their off-platform ads. So they've probably developed an inventory of impressions that they could sell to people. And so there's probably only so many people that want to go up funnel and spend so much money on off platform ads to get people onto Amazon. So, if you're on CNN or Fox News or whatever, and Amazon has, placements, they're probably not selling all those placements that they have available, or they want to get more demand so that they could raise the price in whatever auction that is for, CPMs or whatever. So I would imagine that's probably where they're going. Cause I would agree with you. Like if you're on Amazon, you're looking for products, you're not looking to, you're not looking for a mechanic or, whatever lead gen product advertiser.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. You're probably correct on that. Probably more off of Amazon ads than in the actual Amazon.com platform. Lesley, what do you think?
Okay, let's bring this down to the average seller or even someone with a really great brand. Don't do it, y'all. This is just Amazon sucking more of your profitability away. If you have a really big brand and you're competing against other really big brands, yes, you need to do things to build your really big brand and to make sure you're top of mind and not selling your product, but just building brand awareness. But if you're the average Amazon seller, you need to kill it on awareness and ads for your specific products, because that's how people search on Amazon. And most of the people who buy your products search for it on Amazon. Some comes from it off Amazon, but most of it is on Amazon. So I think this is one more thing where it could get really tempting for smaller, mid-sized sellers, decent sellers, to say, I'm going to test this out. I'm going to dump some money in there. And all of a sudden, you're just totally negative on your profitability. Amazon makes everything seem really sexy so that you'll want to buy it. I mean, later we're going to talk about AGL. Do global logistics with us. It'll be great until we don't have capacity and we jack the prices up and don't take responsibility for our failures. And I'm sure that the advertising would be the same thing. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to that. I think the interesting thing here, though, is that they are allowing, they're always very hard on that there are customers and you can only communicate with them through us. But now they're opening that maybe a little bit where you can collect the information from their customers and contact them directly. So that's the only benefit, I guess, I could see. But yeah, you're definitely right that they keep trying to get more and more and more ad dollars from everybody for sure.
Yeah, and I really think this is targeting not physical product sellers. I think they're going after a completely different market. Now they'll probably try to, sell it to us as sellers, but
they will.
It says non-endemic brands, meaning not physical product brands, that this is really more targeted for. But I have a feeling they'll try to see if they can sell it to us.
Yeah, and Liren does say in his post that to catch up, Amazon needs to reach beyond e-commerce brands. So that might be where you're correct, where they're trying to go with this. Get the bigger brands that are spending lots of money on Facebook and ads, or even non-e-commerce brands that aren't advertising on Amazon at all, and get some of their ad dollars.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably targeting, State Farm and Blue Cross Blue Shield and, lawyers.
Yep, for sure. Rachel, what do you think?
First, I just love the way that you said lawyers. That's also how I say that.
I'm sure most lawyers would say it that way too.
Yeah, most lawyers, honest lawyers, would agree, I think. Yeah,
they agree as well. So the first thing that I was thinking was the type of brand you are does matter. So I did work with a client who was selling products up to about $1,000. And so for those ones where you've got a pretty high price point, sometimes your customers do have pretty detailed questions or maybe interested in asking for information from multiple brands before making that buying decision. Yep. We found out from our ads exec that the buying timeline from beginning to end of the purchasing process was close to 4 months. And so they're really researching, they're really looking at this, they're really thinking about it before they buy. And so something like a lead gen ad could potentially work for that kind of company. For most products, it's not going to make sense. But I actually went a different way with this. I was just thinking about the product managers and the advertising team who are like, how do we get promoted? Let's come up with a new thing so we can get promoted.
Yeah. How do we make more money? Yeah. Increase our bonus size. Absolutely. All right. Very good.
Well, and they even redefined who they're competing against. That was what I thought was most interesting about this. If in fact internally at Amazon they're saying we're not getting as much as Facebook, they're completely redefining who their competition is in ad spend, if that is in fact their thinking, instead of how can we make more money off of these suckers. I'm sorry, all of these sellers that they think are suckers, and with all of this advertising dollars that we've already got going. So I'm totally with Rachel. This was like, I know we can make our empire bigger, and then we'll get a bigger piece, and they'll promote me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where Amazon is at. They've gotten to the size now where it's going to be hard for them to increase their e-commerce market share. So they're looking outside of that. Like any big company that gets as big as Amazon, they start looking at other things. 10 years from now, they'll be like installing and building wind turbines or some crazy thing, It's just kind of the natural progression of big companies that start losing their focus a little bit and just try to increase the income for the shareholders more than actually focusing on their core business.
I think that you're absolutely right that they're going to do that, but not because they think it's against their core business. I think that's part of their core business. I mean, have you seen how much it costs to run an AWS facility?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I absolutely think they're going to start going upstream and trying to find cheaper ways to do electricity.
I didn't even think about that. So they might start building their own wind turbines. They're talking about building their own graphic cards to compete with NVIDIA, I heard. So that's definitely something they could do. But all right, very good. So Rachel, before we move on to the next news article here, can you tell us a little bit about Troveres?
Yeah. So I actually started Troveres last year. I've been doing a bunch of different things the last few years. As you started at the beginning of this, being an entrepreneur, you're like, hey, I could do this and I could do that. I could do this other thing. So I also am a seller and doing a lot of different things. And Troveres is a new kind of full service agency that is based on the general contractor model. So the way that someone builds a home is you don't buy a home from someone who built the whole thing from themselves. You have a general contractor who goes out and finds the right software, the right, from a metaphorical perspective, finds the right software, the right partners to build the house, as in the seller business. And what I found is that depending on the provider, they're good at different things. Certain brands and certain software are built by people who either started in one particular category or another. And so they have this particular angle they use when they're building their software, or they're building their agency, and they're building their SOPs. And so we like working with a couple of specific PPC tools and agencies. But what we try to do is find the right partner for a particular client. And then we focus on the strategic analysis and goals. So what should you be doing? We handle that part. How it's done is done by our partners. And so, so that makes it to where we're a lot more agile and we don't have to spend nearly as much time in recruitment and management, which makes me happy.
Absolutely. Anything that can make it easier for people is a good thing. All right. So next article here. This one is a little bit older. I didn't realize the date on this before I sent it out, but I think it's still very relevant. Shen and Temu drive 5% air freight spike. And this was from last November, but it's still an ongoing thing, especially with more of the focus on, the $800 loophole with the tariffs and things like that. And so Shenmue and Tem are basically overloading the air freight systems and the shipping and the import. What's the name of the import agency for products coming into the United States? So any thoughts on that, Kevin? Have you seen an increase in air shipping rates or freight in general coming from overseas?
I do generally see shipping. I've got stuff that should be arriving today by air. So I didn't really pay that much attention to how much it was compared to last time I did a similar shipment because it was a relatively small piece. But I do think that it's going to be interesting to see, like, with more and more people using Temu. I mean, even my son been talking for 2 weeks about these Lego dinosaurs that he was ordering from China. I'm not exactly sure which website we bought them off of, but they're generic Legos that were dirt cheap, and he wanted to get them because they looked cool, dinosaurs. But, you know, I think we're going to start seeing more and more people looking for deals. And with, you know, I feel like every time I go to the grocery store, I complain to myself about, like, wasn't this just $1 less a couple weeks ago, whatever item I'm looking at? And so, like, people are feeling more and more of the squeeze, and so they're looking for more deals. And so I think we're going to see more and more people going to places like Temu. Now, Amazon needs to get a little bit more competition, I think, but I don't necessarily like that it's like Temu or some of these off or out of the U.S. China-owned facilities that are sending to the United States, and they're kind of using both loopholes. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Chinese government isn't subsidizing some of that as well. Don't know that for a fact, but if I was to bet money, I would bet that there is some of that happening.
I would almost have to guarantee it. I've never bought anything from Shenmue or Shen or Temu. I keep combining their names. But, you know, buying from AliExpress, for example, you'd buy like a $5 item, and then shipping would be like $2.30. And so
right. You can't ship to Georgia from Florida for that price.
Yeah, exactly. So I can almost guarantee that it's got to be subsidized just with the volume they're doing, or they're just losing that much money in the hopes to make it up later. What do you think, Lesley?
So, Todd, first, I have to say that Shenmue is brilliant, and I think we should all just start calling all of it that. It's just, Shenmue just means all those things, all those companies. So there's a couple of problems because the Chinese government is essentially a partner in every single company in China. And so there are subsidies that way that business owners here obviously don't have. And then secondly, you know, our own postal rates and the postal treaties on and on, unfortunately give Chinese sellers a tremendous benefit. They don't have to subsidize to get that lower rate because of e-packet. And e-packet is a tremendous problem. If there's anything, you know, sellers talk about organizing around different issues. If there's any issue that sellers in the U.S. should organize around, it is to get rid of the e-packet rates for overseas sellers. And it's in the name of fair competition. We're not even talking about make it easy for the U.S. It's just fair competition, because when something is coming from Shenzhen cheaper than from Iowa, that's a problem. Yeah. But I think you're right, though, on the article. Rates are slightly up, yes, but we're not in peak. And people are going to be sending their inventory over for peak in the next, 2-3 months? So you are going to see the rates go up more. Will that be because of the Shenmue?
Yep.
I don't know, but that's a great question. And now you have Amazon essentially inviting even more Chinese seller competition through this new cheapo marketplace that they're going to do with slave labor products to compete against Amazon sellers. They're in the U.S. Awesome. So I'm not a fan. I don't love it. I don't know if y'all saw it a few months ago. Saturday Night Live did one of the funniest sketches I've ever seen, and it was also heartbreaking. And it was making fun. Y'all should Google it, seriously. And it was like an ad for one of these Chinese marketplaces, a fake ad about, you know, definitely not made with slave labor, and, you know, definitely no chemicals in the clothes, you know, no arsenic at all. And these products, they don't follow our government rules or safety rules. Got to mention slave labor again. But unfortunately, as long as we have this avalanche of products coming in from those cheap marketplaces, that's one more way it's going to hurt Amazon sellers and and U.S. all marketplace sellers who are importing goods.
Yeah, for sure. And you made a good point there. We've got our a newborn baby that we're buying stuff for, and we, at a minimum, when we're shopping for the baby, we make sure that the product is at least coming from a US based seller. Because if I buy something from a Chinese seller and the product is made in China, and something happens, I have no legal recourse. There's nothing I can do to reach them in China. But if the seller at least is in the US, they can be held responsible for their product. So it gives them a little bit more of an interest to make sure that the product is safe.
Yeah, that's a really great insight. And Rachel, I know you have thoughts on that, on the safety thing with kids.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I actually wrote a book on it. I used to manage product safety for Amazon, and basically when I was managing it, they had this exact same concept of whatever people want to buy it, they can buy it. And my argument was that any given customer in the US, they don't know that what they're buying is unsafe. They don't know that what they're buying is likely to contain chemicals that are toxic to their children, and toxic to adults too, but it just shows up in different ways. So for example, lead poisoning in adults shows up as unexplained aggression, depression, anxiety, because you're not getting the kinds of minerals that you're supposed to get. Lead blocks those in your cells and causes permanent damage, lifelong damage. In children, it makes it to where you never actually develop your full potential. And so this concept of Amazon finally closing the loopholes on this stuff, for the most part, mostly you can find things that are safe unless someone's really good at tricking Amazon, which is, unfortunately, the Chinese businesses are also really good at tricking Amazon in this way and providing them with the right paperwork, and it's still unsafe. So again, I applaud you for making that choice. I got in my business partner's face, actually, when he bought something off of AliExpress for his friend's baby. And I was like, let me tell you all the ways this can go wrong. And he said, okay, so I'll get them something else. Like, yes.
Yeah.
that is what I recommend. I actually love Melissa and Doug. I was able to tour one of their facilities in China, and they test every single component before it even makes it to the production line. It is completely safe. So Melissa and Doug for the win. They're awesome. And this whole concept of Shimu is just one huge example of how the laws that are written here that are meant to protect us, that are meant to make things better for us, are just so easy to circumvent. And I don't buy anything for my child and my children when I had a stepchild as well. I wouldn't buy anything from them from sellers that I didn't know. I would always buy name brand stuff for the kids because you just never know. I mean, we would handle so many recalls where, just the yellow one was messed up because that happened to be the one where they used the cadmium. It's just, it just makes it to where it's just not worth it. And there is nothing about Temu or Shein that is worth it to me. I mean, if you want to wear your blood money cheap t-shirt, go for it. But I will definitely judge you for it.
Yeah, it's, I think most people assume or think that, the government is making sure all these products are safe, and that's just not the case. It's impossible for them to even inspect all of it to catch anything. So you really got to take it upon yourself to be careful.
Well, and especially these marketplaces that are shipping directly to you from China. I mean, no one's looking at any of that. And I want to give just a quick example. A thought, Rachel actually jogged a thought for me. I have a client who was selling a device that has certain water flow requirements for the EPA and then additional water flow requirements for California, right? And they had sellers from China jumping on competitive listings that were made to duplicate their listings. And when he ordered the product, none of them actually had any water flow. It was just 100% going through. And Amazon didn't catch it. The EPA said that they didn't have time. They literally said they didn't have time, so they didn't care. California didn't have time and didn't care. And then after we complained to like a million executives at Amazon, they shut down that listing. And you know what happened? The products reappeared under another storefront name and another brand, like literally 3 days later. So, you know, the one of the miracles of Chinese selling that most of us know about is a lot of these sellers have dozens or hundreds or thousands of accounts, so that if one gets shut down, they just move to another one. Yep. So everything related to product safety or any other law. Another one was generic minoxidil products that these Chinese sellers were selling them, and they didn't meet any of our standards here, none of them. And Amazon would shut down the listing and they'd pop right back up. So there's a lot for, I think, all of us as sellers to think about, and for the government to think about on product safety and these, you know, welcome it all in attitude that Amazon now seems to have adopted. It makes me kind of unhappy.
Yeah, for me, I think the only real solution is to basically close that $800 loophole and say everything coming from China is going to be subject to tariffs and inspections. And if any other country starts messing around, we're going to do the same thing to you. You know, it's kind of one of those things. If you give an inch, they're going to take a mile. So you got to set a standard, I'm drawing a blank on the word, but you got to tell them now that this isn't acceptable. We're doing this. If anybody else does it, we're going to do it to you as well.
Well, I think it's important to remember this isn't just about, like, it isn't even just about safety or trying to have a high standard. It's about competition, because American sellers that are held to the rules cannot compete fairly when the other companies aren't held to the rules, so they don't pay for testing or have higher quality ingredients. It's all about fair competition for sellers here in the U.S.
Yep. Yeah, free market is the best, but we don't have a free market when their government is subsidizing their shipping and who knows what else and not keeping up with standards. So got to do something about it. All right, very good. So Lesley, can you tell us a little bit about Riverbend?
Absolutely. So Riverbend takes on all of the challenges you don't want to, which means when Amazon enforces against you and you don't understand why, you have ASINs taken down, your account might get taken down or blocked, or you just have a problem that you've been dealing with, you know, repetitive, nonsensical answers from Amazon over and over again, or obviously unfair enforcement. We will help take that on with you. So we have a great team of folks. A lot of them are ex-Amazon employees. And we would love to help any seller with their challenges. One of the best parts of Riverbend is that we have actual human beings who answer our phones. And so if you think you might have a problem, but you don't know if we're the right solution, or is this something that can even be fixed, there are human beings who will talk to you about that before we even try to sell you anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've used your guys' service and it works well. So definitely can.
Thank you.
All right. So the next news story we've got here, Amazon's latest FBA fee is a blow for brands. Here's what you can do. And essentially they're talking about the new low inventory fee, which isn't necessarily that new anymore, but they're starting to charge for it where they were given a grace period before. So why don't we start with you, Rachel? Let me know your thoughts on this fee.
And my initial thought, so they've been subsidizing sellers not being really tight with their inventory for a while. So when you ship something in to one of the replenishment centers and it gets split out, it gets put into little green totes called transship totes. And it goes on a milk run. Don't ask me why they came up with milk. I don't remember why that was a thing. And they get transferred between the different FCs. So they take on a lot of the cost of spreading it throughout their network so that their last mile delivery is most efficient. And what they were finding was that a lot of sellers were assuming that they were good to go as long as they had, say, 10 days of cover. Great. And then they would ship stuff in and then it would arrive before the other one out. So I'm in stock, right? But what that ends up doing is to meet certain promise dates, to meet certain delivery times, Amazon has to pay more for shipping. And so they basically were like, how do we force the sellers into cooperating? That was the first thing. The second thing that I'm pretty confident I disagree with my business partner on this. I'm pretty sure it's a method to try to get people to use AWD. Yes. And while I think that AWD is a pretty great program, if that's really where they're going with it, it was pretty mean, because there's a bunch of things that AWD didn't do when it launched. And so if you're just a regular seller doing expiration dated stuff, or like they just opened shoes like last week, they don't have any oversize. So you're still stuck with all of these fees. There's no way out. There's just dealing with it. And so the way that we've been approaching it for our clients is basically trying to have 6 to 12 weeks of cover at any given time. Because once you go beyond that, then now you're incurring other fees. So 6 to 12 weeks is it. And that can be pretty stressful for some folks who aren't used to that, or who do long tail items. And so as much as possible, we've been putting long tail items into AWD. It's much cheaper. It's easier to manage than trying to use FBA. But it's been frustrating. And I would say that normally it seems like they were launching some big new fee, like one of them a year, and then you'd have time to get used to it. This year they launched 3 big new fees, and that's been pretty frustrating, because it's fairly simple to change your client's process or your own process. I'm having to do the same thing with my own seller account for one fee. Then you're like, okay, so I just fixed that. Great. Done and dusted. I can move on, get ready for Q4, whatever. And then they're like, oh, and also, like, didn't you just do this other fee? Why are we now having to pay return fees too? And so it just keeps stacking up. And I understand why. I mean, they were subsidizing this for a while to make Amazon, the number one player that it is. And so now that everyone's dependent on them, then they're like, great, now we can do profit for our shareholders. So as understandable as that is, because that is their role as the giant corporation that they are, is to get profit for their shareholders, it's extremely annoying as anyone on the seller side.
Yeah, it's I definitely get what they're trying to do 100% with spreading product around, make sure they have enough inventory so it's not running out of stock, but probably more importantly, like you said, so that it's closer, they can spread it closer to customers and save on shipping and stuff like that. I think where the hard part comes in is they haven't really been transparent in how they're going to calculate those 28 days worth of stock. And are they going to figure in, if you're on a listing with multiple sellers, how's that going to work? Because if you run out, the listing is still going, so why does it matter? Or if you do a promotion outside of Amazon and spike your sales, now all of a sudden you have to maintain more inventory or get hit with a fee, or Prime Day is coming, how's that going to work? Calculating that in after Prime Day, Christmas, and seasonal products. I mean, you need a whole team of mathematicians to figure out proper restocking for seasonal products sometimes. So I think that's where a lot of people are upset with the kind of a lack of transparency on that.
It's funny that you say that. Actually, my business partner is an economics major. He does all the math because it really is that complicated.
It is, for sure. What are you thinking, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is like, I kind of understand Amazon's point of view that, there's this logistical challenge. I've noticed every year there's some new thing, IPI score goes up. You can only send in X amount per unit, then per account, and then, they keep changing it. It's, cubic volume, it's units, they keep changing it. There is a little bit of they can only have so much in there. And everything for years has always been on not having too much in. So they've been conditioning sellers for years. This is not your just, send in a container with a year's worth of inventory and leave it there, because, they've long-term storage fees and all these other fees, utilization fees, all these fees, but it's always been more on not having too much. Yeah. So now all of a sudden it kind of is like a shock to the system, where it's like, we're going to charge you for not having enough. And to that point, I think a lot of people have anxiety, and I think the real test is going to be, what does January look like for a lot of people? Because they say like, oh, okay, we're going to look at both 28 days and 90 days to calculate whether or not. So as long as you're fine in one or the other, well, 90 days includes the last 28 days. So if the last 28 days included basically Black Friday to Christmas Eve, that might be 3-4x spike for a lot of people. And then generally November is a bit of a spike as well. So now all of a sudden your sales are going down in January for some of your giftable type products. And I sell a lot of giftable products. So I think it's going to be very interesting for people to see what that actually looks like. Now, I was happy to see that they got rid of it for products under 20 units a week. I sell a lot of long tail products. Now, I have the benefit of, I have a warehouse. Not everybody has that benefit. So I do a lot of kind of tweaking and customizing. In fact, I see my warehouse worker just come in to go get something. So she's, prepping inventory to send in. So I can react a little bit more than a lot of other sellers. But if your business model was, import from China or India or wherever and send into Amazon, and you were trying to just not have more than 6 months of inventory, your window that you're trying to shoot for has gotten a lot smaller.
Yep.
And, it almost feels punitive. If you are in that camp of where you're now getting, the small or the low inventory fee. And then the part that I still am not 100% sure on is if they have delays checking it in, how much are they going to account for that? Yes, they had said that they were going to, give you some credit for that. I don't remember exactly how they worded it, but like we've all had it happen where, all of a sudden you've got a shipment that's just sitting there for a month, or you're in fulfillment transfer status and it's taking forever, and it's, maybe available for sale, but nobody's buying because not nobody's buying, but your conversion rate's down because they're quoting 3-4 week delivery times.
Yep.
So that's going to hurt you too. So I think there's a few things there that I think,
or when something we're going
it's going to take a while for the dust to settle.
When you send a 500-pound pallet to Amazon with 900 units on it, and they claim we sent nothing, so that kind of stuff happens all the time too. It's like, I paid for a $500 pallet with nothing on it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
What do you think, Lesley?
This is the biggest stacked deck against sellers of any fee ever. And number one is the visibility, like Kevin was just talking about, because it's hard enough to fight, like, let's say where they're charging too much money for your pick and pack because they mismeasured the product. It's hard enough to fight that. How are you going to fight a fee where something sat on the loading dock and then it sat in transship, and it's, what are you supposed to do? Like sit and literally refresh the page over and over again to see when they actually start receiving inventory? How are you going to prove what they actually did, how long it was in what status? And as Kevin said, they haven't told us the rules for any of that. So I don't see how you fight that. But the bigger theme to me is Amazon has probably spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing its logistics. It is probably the most sophisticated logistics company in the world in its own right. I know there's UPS and FedEx, but you got to think about how they're actually taking the order, fulfilling the order, and then having it land on your door, right? With all the last mile and the wagon wheel or whatever they called it for getting it out in the places in the middle of nowhere. So y'all know Amazon runs out of stuff, right? Like they run out of things and it doesn't get here on time. They run out of stock frequently. So if they have this infrastructure that they've built and spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it, please tell me how I am supposed to figure out how to have enough, but not too much, because that's exactly what they're asking for. So for Peak, I'm launching a new product for Peak. I am guessing what, and because it's seasonal, I am guessing what the demand is based on what research I can figure out. Amazon has better numbers on that than I do because they can see all the numbers for all the competing products and all the internal data on all their retail stuff. I'm making an educated guess. So tell me how I'm supposed to order and send in just enough, but not too much if they cannot do it.
Yeah, it's definitely very frustrating for sure. So I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out, but this cannot be weighing well on with the fact that now they're under investigation from the is it FCC or
FTC.
FTC. So yeah, they keep doing these little things that are like, okay, you got to have this much inventory, but not more than this. Your price has to be between this and this. And at what point do we reach the monopoly status,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're actually hurting one of their own primary goals as well, because one of their top goals always has been selection on the platform. And when you are putting the squeeze on people who may have some, oh, we don't make as much on this item, it's really hard for us to figure out what the sweet spot is on inventory. I'm just not going to sell that SKU anymore. Yep. Over time, that's a reality. That's something that could actually happen, at least from US sellers, and you're diminishing your selection. But you're right. You bring up a great point, because part of the way that Amazon has been able to escape some of the regulatory criticism is by saying, we don't control the third-party sellers. That's the marketplace. They do their thing and we're just the platform. Yep. But how many factors can you dictate before you can't make that claim anymore that you don't have any material control over those sellers?
Absolutely. Definitely an issue. Kevin, why don't you tell us about My Amazon Guy real quick?
Sure. We like to think of ourselves as a education company that just happens to also be an agency. I joined My Amazon Guy about a year and a half ago. I've been running virtual summits under Maximizing E-commerce, and Stephen made me an offer I couldn't refuse to come join MAG as part of an acquisition there. And it truly holds the case that we really like to be an education company. You Google almost anything Amazon related, there's probably a video that Stephen has done about that particular topic that shows up in Google results or YouTube results. So we're all about helping sellers along the way because it is hard to navigate all this stuff. I mean, Amazon just keeps making it more and more challenging. I mean, I understand Amazon, they're doing the best they can at some ways too, but they have similar goals to us, but not the same goal to us. Our goals are overlapping, but not aligned. And so, we like to share what we've learned along the way with over 400 clients and over 500 employees, and doing about $800 million a year in sales on the Amazon platform, to be able to share what we've learned along the way to help sellers make informed decisions.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, that we run over the hour here, and I said we'd take about an hour. So we made it through a lot of really good news. I really appreciate all of you coming on. Rachel, Lesley, Kevin, this has been fantastic. If anybody wants to jump on this live stream next week when we do it again, or get more information about when we're going live, make sure you head on over to AmazonSeller.school, get on our email list, subscribe to YouTube, all of that good stuff. But thanks, guys, for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you.